Welcome to our Facebook Live from Educators to Allies, supporting students who are transgender. My name is Rita Suh, and I am a professor at Cal State Long Beach, and I also work at the Culture and Equity Project at UCLA Center X. I am honored to be here with my friend, Ronnie Appleseed. He is a biology and earth science teacher at South San Francisco High School and has worked as a diversity educator for the LGBTQ plus community for many years. I get to work with a lot of pre-service and in-service teachers, and I came to realize that many educators want to support students in the transgender community, but they just don't know how. So we're here because we are advocates for those who are oppressed and ignored in classroom spaces. And we've structured this session to be a conversation. So we'll address questions from the audience at the end because Ronnie may address them throughout this session anyway. So let's get started. Ronnie, hi.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here. So I was hoping that you can start off our session today by explaining the difference between gender and sexuality.
Excellent. Okay, great. So great first question. So I'm going to start off by being a science teacher. All right. And when I teach science, I'm teaching my students how to understand big concepts through models. A lot of time I'm having them understand concepts that exist in the world by creating models. And when my students create models about, say, what happens when you stick an ice cube out in the sun? Okay, if they create a model for that, they might come up with an initial idea, what's going on in their head. They'll draw it, they'll write about it. And then they'll be presented with more evidence. And over time, they'll develop that model and they'll develop it until it becomes more clear. And it's a continuation process. So I kind of want to frame this in that lens of creating a model. So I'm going to show you all a model about the differences between sex and gender. And what I want you to kind of understand is that this is today's current model. And guess what? It's going to change. It's going to be revised. We're going to get more evidence. We're going to get more information. And we'll apply that. Okay, so first let's start with the letters. Okay, so LGBTQ plus. Some of you might have heard this before about our community. So L, lesbian, G, gay, B, bisexual. Those three terms refer to sexuality. Lesbian generally refers to people who identify as women who also date and are attracted to people who identify as women. Gay is the same term, but generally for people who identify as men. Bisexual can be for people who are attracted to both men and women. And then all of a sudden you get to the T. And the T is a little different, right? It's not necessarily about sexuality. It could be about something a little bit different, which is gender identity, okay? And then there's the Q, which is my favorite term. It's actually how I personally identify. It's kind of a big umbrella term. It's queer. There's something a little different about it, and you don't put me in a box. It's just queer. It's a great term. So just right? Yeah. Oh, sorry to interrupt, but just to kind of go over the letters for everybody, okay? So let's dive into a model real quick here. And this is the model that's used at UCLA. It's the gender unicorn. A lot of different organizations use this to kind of talk about gender identity and gender expression. So gender identity, it's a really abstract concept. Let's start with sex. So sex assigned at birth. Here it's represented by this DNA, and it's represented in the genitalia area of the unicorn. All right, and so that's physical. That's how we're assigned at birth. It's based on your chromosomes. If you are given two X chromosomes genetically, then you are generally assigned female at birth. If you receive an X and Y chromosome, you are considered male, assigned male at birth. Okay, but not everybody. Yeah, so Dr. Sue, not everybody really recognizes that or not everybody kind of identifies as the way they were born, right? So it gets into this kind of abstract concept, and that's in our head. So as you can see, it's kind of coming out of the unicorn's head there, right? And it's this cute little rainbow, and that's more for gender identity. So that's how do you perceive yourself? What's going on in your mind? Okay, so some people who are assigned female at birth might not identify that way. They might identify as something on the other side of the spectrum, being a man, or maybe something in between, not on the two ends of the spectrum, not on the ends of the binary. That's what's considered non-binary. Okay. So anyway, I hope that's clear. Am I making this clear, Dr. Suh? Is there anything I can say to make this a little bit more clear for folks?
No, I think you clear that up. I mean, the biggest thing is that we want to make sure that everyone understands that there is a difference between gender and sexuality. So yeah, I think you did that.
Excellent. Yeah. And so for our students, whether you're teaching high school or younger or older and post-secondary education, it's just incredibly important to not assume what
Mm-hmm.
people's gender identity is and to ask them. And we can kind of dive into that in a little bit here too. But just one more thing I just want to stress is that this is a model.
Mm-hmm.
And all models will be revised. All models will be improved upon as we gain more information and get a deeper understanding of the concept.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Thank you.
absolutely, yeah.
So the other question that um, I know that so many teachers want to ask, and just educators, is how can educators be an ally for students who are LGBTQ plus?
Awesome. Okay, yeah. So, how can educators be an ally for the students in the LGBTQ plus community? So, number one thing is building those student teacher relationships. All right,
Mm-hmm.
that's just absolutely huge. So, if you're not taking the time to connect with your students on a personal level, they're never going to trust you with what's actually going on in their life. Like, they're not going to tell you that, hey, I don't feel safe in the bathroom, because they're not going to be comfortable talking to you. So, like, I guess the very first thing I got to stress is building positive student teacher relationship. We do that initially through surveys. I suggest surveys to start off first week of school. You're giving out surveys. You're asking students how they identify, what pronouns they use, what preferred name they would like to use in the classroom, and just by doing that, you send a message that you care and that
Yeah.
you're interested in helping them and you're interested in being there for them. Look at our names on the screen here. We've got our pronouns up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just that. Even if you don't have like what's considered like an alternative pronoun, like I use they.
Mm,
If say you use traditional pronouns, he and she, even just showing that gives students an opportunity to say, hey, it's okay for me to show my pronoun, even if
totally.
it's a little different, you know?
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
then actually that the other question that I always get is when not when, but how, like if you can share some strategies on how teachers can ask for pronouns. So I know one thing you said was surveys, but what are some other strategies?
Yeah, I personally use surveys right at the beginning. That's
Mhm.
like number one, but then I'll do it again because maybe they weren't comfortable with me the first week, right? Like, so I'll do it again. Last year it was all virtual learning, right? It was all
Yeah.
on Zoom. So I personally invited my students to put their pronouns up on Zoom. And then I actually got some of my students back in the classroom kind of at the end of last semester. So I had about a third of my students in the classroom, and we made our little table tents with their names on them. And
Mm,
I was like, please put your pronouns on if you feel comfortable with that. It really helps me.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I kind of made it about how I want to use your pronouns.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess just to kind of follow up on, it's just showing that you care is just huge.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Um, so the other question I had was if you can share any advice to teachers or any educators for that matter who want to support students, but either they don't have the background knowledge or are afraid of using the wrong language or offending the community. I think there's a lot of teachers who want to support, but just don't know how, and they're so afraid. So if you can share what you think.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so first, I'm just going to share with you all that I am transgender. Okay, so I identify as trans. I also identify as non-binary. Even though I've got this like super masculine beard and deep baritone voice, I actually do identify like not on the super ends of the binary spectrum. But I consider myself a transgender man, just kind of for simplistic terms and how I kind of navigate moving through this society. And so just with that, I can like, I'm basically sharing that so I can tell you that I can speak directly to this. Okay.
Mhm.
So, advice that I can give for teachers who are terrified of making a mistake is that I'm transgender. I'm a teacher. I make mistakes all the time. All right, I screw up working with my trans and gender nonconforming and queer students all the
Yeah.
time. I will use dated language. I'm in my late 30s. That apparently makes me an elder in the LGBTQ plus community.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that's funny. I didn't know that.
and so I'm constantly screwing up. What the 14-year-olds, the language that they use might be completely different from the terminology that I learned when I was young and I was, coming into my own as a trans person and as somebody who identifies as queer.
Right.
It's like a model. It's like
Mhm.
things are always changing, things are always revising. So you got to ask your students how they want to be addressed, what language they like to use, and then you practice. And don't be afraid. It's like you're not going to be perfect. I screw up all the time, and I'm trans, so.
Yeah.
I guess it's hard if you do mess up and they call you and they say, hey, that's not the right way to address me. I guess don't take it personal, because they are so like, they can be so, triggered by the lack of, inclusion or the lack of representation and being in the classroom. They can be kind of triggered by that.
Absolutely.
So I would just, if somebody calls you out, if your student calls you out on it, say, hey, thank you. Thank you for telling me how you want to be addressed, and I will do that, and I will practice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's so important to also keeping in mind what you mentioned about building relationships. And we know that how important that is in the classroom. But when a student is able to not correct the teacher, but kind of teach the teacher, it also helps build a relationship to say, hey, I feel safe enough to tell my teacher, whatever, fill in the blank, to correct my teacher and not feel like I'm in trouble for doing that.
Yeah.
I also think on the other end, that relationship that the teacher has created with the students allows room for the teacher to say, please correct me if I'm making mistakes, and for the students not to get too triggered by it. I mean, there may be triggers, but not so upset that they would feel like maybe they would have to cancel the teacher or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a legitimate fear of saying the wrong thing, but yeah, the relationship is so important.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Like the fear of being canceled by like students can definitely be real. And
Yeah.
again, making it about learning and not being about, even though we're older and we're the adults in the room, that does not always make us the expert.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And so, yeah, learning from our students. One more thing that you just kind of reminded me of, another way we can really support our students and really be there for them is normalizing transness and gender nonconformity by reflecting in the curriculum. Straight up. Like, I'm a biology teacher, right? So I don't know how many of you know about Cortez rainbow wrasse. They're a type of fish. They're a fascinating tropical fish that live in the Pacific Ocean and in the Caribbean. And there's only one male in a school of the fish. There's only one male, and when that male dies, the largest female physically transitions into a male. So that school of fish has a male.
Amazing.
And so it's happening. Like, this world is actually queer. There is representation that we could put out there for the students to learn about. And it's a matter of reflecting their lives into the curriculum. You don't necessarily want to have the students be totally centered as like you don't want, like, say you have a trans student in your class, you don't want that student to become like the trans mascot, right? Because that would just get, that happened to me and I was in high school and they're like, you're the trans student, we're so proud of you, let's put you on a pedestal. That would give me an anxiety attack.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, I kind of want to shift the idea of centering trans students themselves into centering trans experience and normalizing trans experience in the curriculum.
Yeah, I love that. I apologize for the sirens. Oh my gosh. And I wanted to share the resource that you shared with me a few years ago. Welcomingschools.org is also another great website with tons of resources. If you can speak to that and what they have there.
Yeah. So, I think I might even have a slide for that. Let me just take a quick look here. All right. So here we go. So welcomingschools.org. This is a part of the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, okay? So if you go to welcomingschools.org, there's a lot of great resources on that website that talk to some really important points. So right here, how do you support transgender and non-binary students in the classroom? So here's a little checklist. This is directly from the welcomingschools.org. So it will talk about, how do you address students' preferred names? How do you address their pronouns? How do you go about navigating the school database? Because their legal name might be completely different from what they're comfortable using in the classroom. So how do you navigate respecting the students being referred the way they want to, while also having to deal with the legality of the documents, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then again, how do you family support? How do you navigate having a student who uses certain pronouns in the classroom and different pronouns in the home?
Mm-hmm.
It'll talk about school support, and it'll also talk about gendered facilities. So we're talking about sports. We're talking about prom dresses, something as simple as a prom. What outfits are allowed at the prom, things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of great resources at the Project for the Human Rights Foundation. Yeah, I highly
Yeah.
suggest. I'll go back to that slide just so folks can see the resource here. Okay.
I mean, there are hundreds, if not 1,000, hundreds of lesson plans. Um, just also like almost like a Q&A or FAQ type of site too, for like, how do I address this and back to school night and all of these things. It's phenomenal. So I go to that all the time. Um, there was something that you said earlier, about not centering the student. And I just think that is so important, Ronnie. If you don't mind sharing, because we've talked about this before, how generationally we have seen that there are differences. Our generation, how like we almost wanted to be centered in the classroom series, to be highlighted. Look at me, pay attention to me. Like, this is how I feel. But we've been noticing after working with students in this Gen Z generation that they don't want to be centered. They don't want to be highlighted. They just want to be known as a student and not a student who is, fill in the blank. So if you can just kind of speak to that, and then also your own like personal narratives of your chemistry class.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you for asking that. I'm happy to. Yeah. So I teach high school. I work with adolescents. Excuse me. So I mostly work with freshmen. I love them. I love my 14-year-olds very much, and they. I did a lot of surveys last semester during virtual learning, and a lot of them were like, "Please don't like make me stand out and talk about the fact that I'm trans, or don't make me discuss it, or don't put me on the spot." That's like not what they want, which is so interesting to me. Excuse me, because when I was in high school in the late 90s, it was more like, oh my God, are there any of us? Is there anybody out there that's like me? Because it wasn't okay to really be out of the closet back then.
Yeah.
So for back then, I was just looking for when I was in high school, I was just looking for somebody who was like me. And I think now, like, they're like, okay, it's like represented in the media. Like, we see people like us. That's great. Don't make me that centered person. So I want to say maybe shifting from the word centering the student experience to normalizing the student experience, right? So it's totally normal to have trans kids in the classroom now. It's totally normal to have them reflected in media, and their lives are normal and a part of society. So I'm seeing a shift. In fact, I did. I went to an LGBTQ event last month, and I interviewed a bunch of people, because that's what I'm an educator and I can't help myself. I'm like going around and I'm like, I've got a question for you. And so I started asking a lot of people, mostly millennials. And so kind of in between the kids that are in high school now, and I'm like a millennial cusper, millennial cusper. And so I was asking some younger folk kind of in their that just finished high school in their 20s, early 20s. And I asked them, like, how could educators better support you as a trans or gender non-conforming student back when you were in high school? And I was shocked. The majority of the answers were, please don't center me. I was like, what? I thought it was going to be like, share our experience and highlight us and make us. There was more like, please don't put me on the spot just because I'm considered different.
I love it.
So I was pretty shocked with those results, and I was happy to see them. And it was a great to understand this new shift that's kind of going on here. So again. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's shifting from centering to normalizing. That's all.
Yeah, I love that. I am fascinated by the how much changes in one generation, and it really is just a few years. It just fascinates me. And then, if you can share about your own personal experience about why it's so important to share and ask students for pronouns and to know who they are and to build those relationships with them. And then your experience about that losing your spot in your chemistry class.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share a personal experience, and I'll share some statistics for you all. Okay. So when I was in community college years ago is when I was transitioning. I transitioned when I was a student in community college. And it can take time. It takes time. There's a lot of loops to jump through, a lot of hoops to jump through, to especially like getting your name changed. That's a legal process. You have to go to court. There's a lot of steps you have to go through to do that. And it took me a while to legally change my name. So while I'm attending, I started taking testosterone. I started transitioning like physically because that's what I chose to do. First of all, let me just state that not all trans people want to take hormones.
Yeah.
Not all trans people want to have surgeries. It's in there again, gender identities in your head. So some people, all they want is to just be seen as how they identify.
Mm-hmm.
But some of us, for me personally, I wanted to take testosterone. That was important to me for my transition. So I started taking testosterone and I started identifying it with the name Ronnie Appleseed and using the pronoun he. But that's not what my legal name used to be. Also, please don't ever ask your students like if they have changed their name, like what's your real name or what's the name you were born with? Like that's just not appropriate. Just to state that. But so I'm attending community college. I have not legally changed my name, and I'm trying to get into this into this chemistry class that's incredibly impacted. All right, I'm saying, and there's like 25 people on the wait list, and I'm actually enrolled in it. But if you don't show up on that first day and you don't say I'm here, you're out. Wait list in. Okay. Right. And so we're there. It's the first day. I actually had written this teacher an email to let them know that I'm trans and to not use my name and to use this other one when you're taking attendance. This teacher didn't get the email. Didn't see that by the first day. And so when this teacher was taking attendance on the very first day of chemistry class in community college, they get to me, they say the name I was born with, and I don't want to out myself because that's dangerous.
Absolutely.
I had a beard. You know, I had a full baritone voice, you know, and all of a sudden I'm supposed to raise my hand to like what's considered a feminine name in this society. And I did not raise my hand. And the teacher said, "Are you here? Are you here? You're not here? You're out. Wait list. Here's a ticket. Here's your number. You're in." And I lost my spot. And I did. And I actually didn't get enough units to get my financial aid that semester because of that. And I ended up dropping out that semester because I couldn't get my financial aid, and I ended up working at I was waiting tables, and it was just I was trying to move my life forward, and it was really challenging. I couldn't afford to do it, so excuse me. I waited till I fully changed my name legally, and then I went back to community college and I finished. So I'm just saying it's. Let's just show a statistics real quick on these slides, and then I think we should get to maybe some questions with some folks here.
Yeah. For those of you watching, feel free to add your questions.
Let's see here real quick. So right here. First of all, why is it important to support our students? Okay. This is a real statistic. 75% of transgender students feel unsafe in the classroom. That's a majority. That's a large majority. But what's important about names and pronouns is right here. Trans kids who can use their preferred chosen name are 65% less likely to commit suicide. You know, that's huge.
That's huge.
I mean, when you say we're whatever your beliefs are, you're like, oh, okay, that's not part of like my beliefs or whatever it is. Like, it's not really about you as the teacher. You didn't get into teaching because of you. You got into teaching for them. Yeah. I know that. Okay. And since this is about them, whatever your personal beliefs are about using their names and their pronouns, just you have to use their names and pronouns because it will save their life. That's it. Like, that's what this is about. Like, you can have your own beliefs. I'm not trying to tell you to like change what you believe in this world. I'm asking you to help save lives. Is what we're doing here. Yeah.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. So thank you for asking that. I just I think I hopefully I've covered that. So I don't know. Do you want to take some questions from the audience, or how do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, we can. I mean, let me ask one last question that I know is going to pop up.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And we kind of discussed. I mean, you kind of addressed it, but how do educators? Okay, so those whose students have not, oh my gosh, what's the wording? Students who have not come out to their parents, or their parents are not okay with their pronouns or their preferred name, how can we as educators deal with that situation when the parent is now present in front of the student and the educator?
Yeah, that's a powerful question because I struggle with that. As I'm trans, I'm an educator, and I'm like, whoa, how do we navigate this?
Yeah,
Because you want to be respectful of the parents, and this is about saving lives
right.
with the student. So I would say let's go back. Let's go back to those student-teacher relationships.
Yeah.
If you take the time to build that student-teacher relationship, and you got to take the time to do it, you can ask them on
Mm.
another survey, or even if you know, you can ask them personally, how would you like me to address you when your parents are around? What pronouns do I use at the sporting event if I'm sitting next to your parents in
Mm.
the stadium? You know, how do I cheer for you? How can I support you? Okay.
Mm.
So this might be something that they would answer on that first day survey, but probably not.
Mm-mm.
Probably 2 months in survey.
Yeah.
2 months in, you got to re-ask these questions. How can I support you around your parents?
Especially
Okay.
during right before conferences, like parent teacher conferences. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. So again, I say it's all about those relationships. Now let's talk about parent teacher relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's
So
build those
important.
from the beginning. Let's
Mhm.
build them strong from the beginning. One of my favorite things to do, like if I'm having a bad day, is give good news phone calls to parents,
Oh,
and
yeah.
because they never get them, right? So just like, hey, your kid's doing great, kind of thing.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
and so like the more of those you do, like the teachers aren't scared when you call them for something like big, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, for something bad or to talk about something complex and challenging like gender. So if you've
Absolutely.
already got a good strong relationship with those parents, then you can talk about these complex topics without it being like combative.
Mm-hmm,
Now,
mm-hmm.
all of us, if you haven't been talking to the parents all year, and all of a sudden you're like, little Jonathan's doing great, and they're like, you mean Jennifer? It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be so you gotta build those relationships. Yeah,
Okay.
totally. Yeah,
Amazing. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks for asking that. Yeah.
Yeah, we could take a few questions from the audience. So there's one. Um, I mean, working with young children, it is different. I mean, I'm not sure how young, but if you can provide some suggestions. I know welcomingschools.org has resources for even kindergarten and preschool. So just know that Welcoming Schools does do that. But Ronnie, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a really hard one for me because I do teach high school, and I work with adolescents mostly. I've worked with middle schoolers as well, but I actually don't have a lot of experience working with elementary school students. So I'm curious. That's something I need to do more research on personally. I'm going to use the Human Rights Foundation, welcomingschools.org for that. Um, but yeah, I actually don't know how to address that. I'm just going to be honest. I actually don't know how to work with elementary students. I don't know.
That's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. I do know from teachers that I work with, I mean, what they've done is what you've already talked about, bringing in literature and intentionally talking about these leaders and writers and whomever, bring them into the classroom and normalizing it is one. Asking students for pronouns, and then for those students who don't know why you're asking, like, why are you asking me for my pronoun? It's a great place to have that conversation. I think those are two things that I've seen that are really just kind of apparent in classrooms, and having conversations about hate and bigotry and why things are left out of the curriculum intentionally. I mean, it's a great place to explore power and privilege, right? When we talk about like who writes the curriculum and why are these narratives left out, or why are these histories left out of the books and literature. So yeah.
Oh, I think that's really powerful because that again goes back to that word I was using earlier, which is normalizing.
Normalizing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if we start normalizing at a younger age, because this is actually happening, like this is real. Like there's the whole argument in society, like how could you teach kids that this is happening in the world? Because it is, and it could
Mm-hmm.
be their experience. I'll just share with you all. I knew that I was trans when I entered preschool.
Mm.
It was because of my first social interactions, and when they started trying to like gender norm, they started teaching us gender norms. They're like, no, the girls are going to go to the right and the boys are going to go to the left, and the girls are going to make macaroni necklaces, and the boys are going to learn how to do something awesome like skateboarding, and like and I love making macaroni necklaces too. I was upset as a kid that I didn't get to learn how to skateboard or
Yeah.
whatever it was, you know what I mean? And so I think normalizing it early because it's real and it's actually happening. I knew when I was 4 years old that I was trans. I knew it, so yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I
Thank you.
mean, actually, that brings up another thing that teachers can do for young students is stop separating students by having them line up like boys and girls, or boys do this and girls do that. Yeah, we've talked
that happens in science a lot for experiments. They'll be like, okay, we're gonna test 2 separate groups, the boys over here, the girls over here. We're gonna measure your height and compare them and learn about means, standard deviation, and all this. Pick something else, please. You could do left-handed versus right-handed. Anything else.
Yeah. What's your original hair color? Yeah, we can.
Yeah, totally.
Another question from the audience. Is there support for parents who are trying to support their child, but they find it difficult in the schools? Which I think is so important.
Yeah. So that's where the parents are trying to so what you're asking, the parents are trying to do their best. They're advocating for their child and they're coming up against roadblocks within the district, within the school.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've seen that too, because it's such a dominating system.
Right. Right. So I say this is when you go to the district level. Maybe the first thing that pops in my mind is go to the district level and ask them for training.
Mm-hmm.
Get your teachers into some PD. I've got lots of resources for great folk who can do that. If anybody needs that at their campus, at their district, we have lots of people that can come in and do these trainings.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing that pops to my mind is go to the district level and get the PD going.
Yeah. Absolutely. And actually, that was the other question too, is there PD that's provided for teachers? So yeah, there's tons. I mean, you did PD for me. So.
Yeah, I've done it. I've done it. There's organizations out there. I'm trying what I need to do is dig out some that are specific for education, because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of people who do diversity training for, say, like big corporations, that kind of thing. But it'd be great to find some that are specific to education, which I'm happy to research. So, yeah.
Is the GSA a place to go to find resources, to find people to do PDs for schools? I mean,
ideally, you would hope. Ideally, yes, but also it might be that maybe your GSA doesn't have enough resources. True. Like maybe your GSA. I didn't have a GSA at my high school, and I went to a public school in California. So hopefully you can go to the GSA for resources, and if not, again, get to that district level or talk to your principal and say, why does our GSA not have these resources?
Yeah.
How can we get more resources for our students? And one thing I just want to say, as we're always changing, the model and the information is always being updated. I love the fact that GSA has shifted. Because when I was a teenager, GSA meant Gay Straight Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
What it means now is the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. It centers and reflects the actual LGBTQ plus community, not making it about like gay and straights getting along together. That's fine. That's beautiful. Like what it's really about, though, is a space to support LGBTQ plus students and their allies. That's the way it should be phrased. So, yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. And then I know before we close off, I know you wanted to do an activity where you have us.
Oh yeah. So and if there's any like more burning questions, you can email me. We'll give out information like that, and you're happy to contact me, and I'm happy to address questions after this. But one thing I'd like everybody to try, please just kind of follow along with me. Let's do a little visualization, okay? You can close your eyes, whatever you want to do, okay? So we're gonna do a little visualization here. We are teachers. We live by the bell, okay? The bell rings, we eat. The bell rings, we pee. The bell rings, we start the class, okay? We live by the bell. Imagine now, everybody take a moment and imagine. You've got a 7-minute passing period, okay? The bell just rang. You've got to go to the bathroom. Where's the closest bathroom? Is it right across the hall? Is it gender neutral?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's not gender neutral and you need a gender neutral bathroom? Now visualize, where is the gender neutral bathroom on campus? Is it up in the tower across campus, all the way across campus? That's where it was at my community college. And there was only one. And so you've got 7 minutes. Walk completely across campus walk up 2 flights of stairs, use the bathroom, and get back to your classroom in time to start.
Mm.
Are you present after you come back after all that time? Are you ready to go? Did you need a moment to settle in before you started? Did you get that moment? Or
Mm.
did the bell just ring and you got to go? On
Mm.
your walk back from the bathroom, were you walking slowly or were you speed walking because you had to get there on time?
Mm.
Right? So think about that. Now, think about how many times a day you got to go to the bathroom. Think about it.
Mm.
Is it 7? Could be. Think about walking completely across campus and up 2 flights of stairs
Okay.
every time you need to go. Okay.
And even during class.
Yeah, during class. Yeah. So as a trans man, I'm going to share, I'll just share with you, like as a trans man, it can be really hard to find a bathroom during class that's available. So maybe it's all full and you got to run over here, run over there, run over there, run upstairs. And all you really want to do is pass that quiz.
Mm.
You just want to get a good grade on that quiz so you don't get grounded for the weekend and you can go out with your friends. That's like all you really care about,
Mm.
right? But you're running around campus to take care of a very basic need that everybody else seems to take for granted.
Mm.
Okay. And so I just wanted you all to take a moment and to like visualize in your mind what it can actually be like for the most basic human all day, everyday need,
Mm.
which is relieving ourselves in a very simple way. So thank you all for visualizing if you took a moment to do that and to just feel what that could be like for a trans student to take care of themselves and still remain present at school.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. I am so thankful for your time. I'm sure everyone else is thankful for your time and for your knowledge. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And his email is already shared on the Facebook on Facebook. So please feel free to email him if you have any questions. But thank you everyone so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ronnie.
My pleasure.